Alright guys, welcome to the first official broadcast of Coach Nichols' YouTube channel, talking all things football. We'll start off today going into offensive stuff. Now, originally, the first offense I was ever in, I played ball in a wing tee offense. We ran a lot of unbalanced and just pounded the rock. And our passing game was pretty much boot, and we'd throw a play action fade or a post, right? That was most of the stuff back then, and we're talking early 2000s. I know I'm dating myself a little bit, but um, and then when I started getting my coaching career, things had kind of evolved into this more spread wing tee stuff, where you've got twins to one side, tight end and wing to the other in the shotgun, right? And you still run most of the same plays, but you start getting into the bubble and some of the quick passing game and stuff like that. Started getting a little more versatile. Kind of evolved from there into a pro style offense, a lot of power, ISO, counter, that type of stuff. And then the most recent offense that I was a part of was another spread offense, and more wing tee spread, is more wide open, like 3 receiver, 4 receiver sets, that type of stuff. And it's all great stuff. I think with the game you have to be able to evolve and adapt. And what I have done since then is began to incorporate some of the newer wide zone stuff, some double wing, that type of stuff, some of the principles in there that are really advantageous and cause problems for defensive coordinators to try to align to. That's all been stuff that slowly has been adapted and brought into the mix here to hopefully create a more potent setup here. So anyway, I will show you, start getting into this offense and start breaking it down for you. If you guys have questions, please leave them in the comments. And at any point, if you need to stop the video, read what you need, etc., take your time, try to digest it. The goal when this offense was kind of engineered, so to speak, was to have something where you can go right or left, but simplifies the teaching for the offensive lineman. Also gives multiple looks without having to have a ton of guys moving around, right? So we'll kind of get into some of the calls and stuff so that you kind of understand each kid only needs to realistically hear maybe 2 to 3 words tops and understand what that means to them. And then every kid's obviously got a job to do. And at the end of the day, if you can't create a system that enables you to have the tools to coach to be successful and enables the kids to be able to play strong, fast, and physical, you're probably going to have a long night somewhere along the way. So it was kind of an effort to try to encompass all those things. I'll give credit to the people that helped me along the way coaching. Coach Rob DeRay, Coach Ty Stevenson, Coach Pickens there up in New London, all those guys. I learned a lot of football along the way working with those guys, and I'm very thankful for the experiences and the time that I had with them. So, all right, first thing, try to picture in your mind a large menu with specialized options. You're obviously going to match this to what your personnel strengths are, right? You're not going to try to fit some type of scheme in there where you're trying to run the ball and you've got your worst blockers on that side, right? So if you've got really bad blockers, more oftentimes than not, the percentages are going to play out that you're going to lose that battle, and the goal is to not fight that battle, right? Stuff I picked up along the way, studying history and kind of art of war and things like that and it was another technique. Kind of also heard Lincoln Riley talking at a clinic once, and he said his goal as an offensive coordinator was to pick plays that he felt he was going to be successful all the time. And really what he's trying to shoot for is consistency and execution. And if you're able to do that, I feel like as a play caller, you're going to look, 1, smarter, 2, you're going to have more likely a chance of success, and 3, your kids are going to buy in more because they're going to see the things that you're calling are working, right? Worst thing as an offensive mind is to be out there and you know what you're doing and you have an idea of what's supposed to happen, but then it doesn't translate on the field, and then you've got 57 people questioning you, right? Everybody, wants to be couch quarterbacks, especially nowadays. Everybody thinks they know football better than everybody else. At the end of the day, there's a million ways to cut it up. There's a million ways to make it happen. There's people that have just lined up and ran dive or lined up and ran wedge and just pounded people down the field for, a very long night, right? Or inside zone from 4 wide receivers, right? So the way that you tailor your offense really should be based on your personnel and your ability to coach and teach it. All right. So large menu, specialized options. You're looking for personnel, and you're ultimately trying to find the thing that is going to be carved out that your players can execute the most often, right? And one of the things you want to think about is when you get out there on Friday night, these kids are going to get tired. No matter how hard you condition, at some point in the game, mentally they're going to get that fog. And that's something I think you have to train in at practice, is one, how you introduce your offense and defense and all your playbook stuff so that they know what they're doing, but how to train them to think. And basically when they start to get tired, or when stuff hits the fan out there on Friday night, or they're down and their backs against the wall, the things they have to rely on are the things you instill in them. So how you install it, how you teach it, how they are able to pick it up, and the multiple layers you're able to do that, I think is going to enable you to be the most successful, right? If you continue to layer in all of these facets and start stacking all these feathers in your cap, eventually you're going to have something that's going to be quite potent. So this offense, it focuses on surface changes, a few simple plays that we can master execution in. Keeping a strong and weak line allows us to simplify and specialize in blocking schemes for each lineman's skill set. So we have a strong side and a quick side, right? Or strong and weak, however you want to look at it. We don't like to say weak because it makes the kids, feel, whatever. But the goal is, at the end of the day, to simplify the amount of install that these kids have to learn for blocking, especially when you start wanting to get into 3, 4, 5 different run schemes. So you got to make sure that your kids can line up and play it versus anything. So the easier you can make that teaching and transition, the better, I believe. Goal of the offense, find weak points structurally and exploit to maximum effectiveness, all while keeping them handcuffs and run fits for options, coverages, blitz opportunities due to the unconventional nature of the offensive alignments. So you'll see some things in this offense that are quite vanilla, and you'll see some things that are abstract and odd. Really what we're trying to do is manipulate the defensive front and manipulate the coverage to give us an advantage somewhere, right? And it's your job as an offensive coordinator to know what formations you're putting in, how that affects odd front, even front, 5-3, 3-4, 4-4, 4-2. You get into some of these 3-3 stack and the mint front and some of these 3 high safety deals. You have to understand what are you doing to force them to line up differently to give you an advantage, right? Sometimes you might run a formation just to get their best player out of the way of where you're trying to run to. Or sometimes you might try to run a formation to get extra numbers on the perimeter. Or maybe you want to run unbalanced to try to squeeze a gap in there and see if their front can adjust properly, right? What you end up doing is you start taking the marker out of the defensive coordinator's hands, and you force it into his players' hands, where they have to think on the field. And anytime a player has to think, and if you start getting them into the gray area where they haven't been coached up real well, things like that, that's where you start having big gash type plays in there, because they're not lined up properly. They're misaligned. They don't know how to read. You start forcing them to think, and their training breaks down. They're not looking at their keys. They're not flowing as fast, right? Those are all the types of things that we try to build into this offense. Realistically, the goal at the end of the day is mistake-free, physical, and a consistent offense, right? The more points you can score, the higher chance you're going to win the game. At the end of the day, you got to have one more point than the other team. So you have to be explosive, and you have to be at times able to grind the clock out, right? I've seen some spread teams really struggle at the end of the game where their specialty is pass, and they need a couple of first downs to end the game, and they're not very good at running the ball. I mean, then you're throwing incompletions, and then they're getting the ball back, right? So I think there's situational football you have to be aware of, and this offense tried to give you the ability to cover all those things. So here's a list of front techniques, chart system, just kind of how I go about it. Evens to the right, odds to the left. How we define our D-line techniques and linebacker techniques so that when we're talking to the players, they understand roughly what position we do. We leave this in the playbook so they can look at it. And, some of this, you're never going to see half of it, right? Like if you're just running a offensive tackle and guard to one side and it's like, 4 open receivers, you're probably not going to have a D gap or an E gap very often, right? But you start getting into some of the heavy sets on the goal line, you want to play with some unbalanced and try to mess with the defense, then you're going to have some of those things. So this is just a broad chart just to help players to understand it all. And I think the first thing you have to do day one as an OC, you have to come in and you have to teach your players. And how you teach them is the difference between how fast they learn, and also it helps if you got smart players, right? The quicker they can absorb it, it helps. If you have kids that really struggle learning, then some of this stuff is going to have to be watered down just a little bit. But the goal is to give them all the tools they need to be successful, and then your job as a coach is to figure out where is the line as far as too much and not enough. So we'll find, based on personnel, strong side, quick side for offensive line, obviously body types and their skill sets. Somebody's a really good drive blocker. Even if they're a little undersized, we may put them on the strong side, right? Let's see, normal splits, you got 2 foot between the guards, centers, and tackles. You get tackle to tight end gap, that's 3 foot. That's pretty standard wing T stuff. We can get into some special tags, and I'm big on tags in this offense because that's how you start getting your variation and your multiplicity. But you go with any formation, and if you just say the words bull or rabbit, so bull tightens it down. You got to think like a bull in a china shop trying to run stuff over, right? Probably foot-to-foot splits, at most 6 inches. And then rabbit widens it out, so at probably minimum 3.5 feet, you're really trying to get more space in there to be able to pound them inside, create interior running lanes. So if they're a big team, sometimes it helps to go rabbit to try to space them out so that you can create a little space, force the big guys to try to defend air, right? More line tags, we got heavy and light. Okay, heavy tells the strong tackle that he's going to have the quick tackle going over to his side. Light is the opposite, so you're taking the strong tackle and moving him over to the quick side. You got max and wax. Max, you move the quick tackle and quick guard over to the strong side. Wax is the opposite. You take the strong side, move it over to the weak side. You got cougar, gator, tiger, and elephant. Those are all A11 type splits. Some of them may or may not be legal, depending on where you're at. But it is, we leave it in the playbook just in case. Whatever you can use, it's an option. So when we talk about install packages, the first thing you're going to talk to your kids about day one, it's got to be simple. It's got to be something that's execute, and probably the thing that you're going to hang your hat on based upon personnel. In this particular case, the team that I had, I thought we don't have a ton of speed, so the initial thought was to go straight ahead, build the offense inside out versus outside in. So we got formations. We start out a lot of 11 personnel stuff. Start getting into some 21 and stuff like that later on, but try to maintain consistent with it. So red wide is basically your typical, a lot of people call it doubles or ace or whatever. The halfback's always to the weak side unless we tag him strong. Red wide tiger, that's an animal word. It's part of the, cougar, gator, elephant, all that stuff. Tiger tells the tight end, it's another animal word, tells the tight end he's going to split out wide and flex. So it's red wide and you say tiger, that just moves the Y, which you can see right here, out wide, and now you've got a doubles formation. Almost looks like air raid, right? Then you go red trips. That tells your Z, or your slot receiver, he moves over, okay? And if you said blue, that's just the opposite of it. So then what we would do is we would take these receivers and just mirror them on the center. So if you were able to take the offense and flip it, that would be red to blue, right? Blue has an L in it, so that means our strong side for the running game is to the left. Red has an R in it, strong side for the running game is to the right. So the offensive linemen are really just hearing the red. The wide or the tiger or the trips or trio, that is the receivers. They're listening for that, right? And all they need to know is if it's blue or red. So they're hearing the left or right for them, and then they're hearing the tag to tell them how to line up. So we start getting into 3 receiver sets. We've got trips here, X is always on, and then our combination of Z or 3 is there. But if we have tags for it, so if we say trio, that moves the X in, and what that enables us to do is, if you want a certain receiver to not be pressed, or if you want to start trying to mess with personnel on the defensive coverage side, say your X receiver's a stud, and they got a stud shutdown corner. Well, unless they're playing man-to-man, if you line the stud up in the middle of that 3 receiver set, he's going to be lined up on the spur or the outside linebacker now. So it starts kind of, it's a tag, but it's also a tool to enable your players to move around so that you can get the guys you want open for certain matchups. Then we had trips, then we had trio, now we've got Trey. X moves to the inside spot. He's the number 3 receiver. Everything else in the inside stays the same for everything else, right? It's really talking to the X on that. Now we get into some of our quad stuff. I love quads, especially with Q run. If you've got a stud quarterback, kind of like, think body types like Cam Newton, Josh Allen, like a tight end with quarterback skills, and it's got some speed. Or even like a fullback that can throw the ball, then you're in good shape, because if you've got something like that where you can run the power interior stuff with the quarterback, and then you force the secondary to have to honor the edges with a good passing game, it's really tough to stop for a defense. Not a ton of people have specialized in learning how to defend quads, right? Usually they'll have one, maybe two checks to it. And oftentimes you're playing games with, well, is the full receiver side where I'm getting my advantage, or the single? And if they're trying to cover both, then oftentimes the run game's open. So it's a lot of spread theory, and you're just starting to get into that playing around with the secondary and front game. So for our quads package, we go roll and loop. They're 4-letter words. Roll starts with an R, loop starts with an L. Roll is to the right. So when you hear roll, obviously the strength is to the right, and then we add the H and the Z and 3 to the right. X will be all by himself. Ideally, he's your big kind of physical, tall receiver, or he's some type of special athlete that you're hoping to get into a one-on-one situation. So if we go roll and then you hear quads, that tells the receivers that they're moving to the weak side, just like with trips. So like with red wide, and then you hear red trips, roll and roll quads, you move the guys over there. And then we can start getting into some things. You got roll quads diamond. That puts the X at the front and the H in the back, so you want to throw a bubble screen out there with 3 blockers or a smoke screen or whatever you want to call it. Basically a quick screen to your H, which is your halfback, and then you got 3 blockers on the edge. If they don't align properly, not only do you have numbers, but you've got your running back in space. It's a recipe for good things to happen. So these are all formations we try to introduce in the first day, and if you notice, some of this has carryover. So really we've learned red and roll as far as our words, and then the word associates with it is blue and loop. Then we've learned trips, quads, trio, and tray. And if you notice, it's the same deal with quads, trio. You're moving the X in, getting the matchup you want. Tray, moving the X in, getting the matchup you want. And you've still got your H right there on the slot. So if you want to run some type of, halfback on linebacker matchup, you can do that. If you want to run jet motion, that's all there, and then you're getting into more of the trips world, that type of thing. So it enables you to do a lot of things with just a couple of simple tags, and it causes the defense to have to think about a lot of things about how they want to handle it. So start getting into some of our 21 stuff. It looks like 22 personnel, but really all we're doing is we're taking that X receiver and we're moving him in, so you hear flank right. What we're doing is, instead of the X being split out wide, he moves into the tight end spot. Now, we can personnel that later. There's more tags for that. You can go buffalo or jumbo, and that'll switch your tight end over to that side. So if you're trying to run some type of quick side run play, it enables you to personnel to what you need based on what you're trying to do. Now, maybe you're trying to run like a quick toss outside, and you want that X there because he's a little more agile, and he can get the edge a little easier. He can seal that edge by just using his lateral quickness. Maybe that's the guy you want. But that's all personnel decisions. That's all, can the guy get the job done on what we're trying to do at that moment. And it also, you start hiding formations in plain sight based on your personnel. So if the defensive coordinator's sitting there and he's a big personnel guy and he's watching, well, now they got 21 personnel. He's thinking pro I, he's thinking this, that, and the other. Well, you come out and you hit him with double tight, right? So, anyway, flank right, flank left, and you got flank right bull. You can obviously you can see the splits difference here between this left bottom picture and this right bottom picture, how they tighten down. It's good stuff for goal line, wedge, that type of thing. You just tag it flank right, and instead of it being where the halfback was here, lined up on the inside leg of the quick tackle at 4 yards, now he's moved back into the I formation, toes at 6, 6.5, depending on his speed. So you go flank right or flank right I, and that changes the H, right? It's just little simple tags. Flank right Z, you look back, our H is back where he normally was because it's just plain old flank right. You got flank right Z, it moves the Z over. Now, for motions, I'm big on teaching the whole number. And the reason I say this is sometimes you want like a jet style motion, okay? Well, you'll call it that. Sometimes you want the guy to just go to the whole shuffle and then you get the extra blocker in the hole. Defenses, I've noticed at the high school level, don't always respond to motion well. And sometimes when they do, they only have like one check to it. So if you have a couple of different motions built into your offense, you can run your base offense with really all you're doing is adding a +1, right? And that's what Z3 and Z6 is. So if I'm running the quick side, say ISO or wide zone play, and I run flank right Z3, and then say I would call it Zulu to the left, basically give the ball to the fullback. He runs the wide zone, but now I've got 2 lead blockers there. It's like a wide zone with 2 lead blockers. Same deal, say I want to run buck sweep with an extra blocker there, and I want to hide it from their coverage. I go flank right Z, Z6. So then you got flank right, the Z's on the opposite side because we tagged him. And then you go Z6, you motion that over and say you want to run buck sweep. So then you run your fullback away, halfback over, pull both guards, or you can go flank right Z, Z6, load buck sweep or lead buck sweep, and you add that fullback in, and now you've got an extra blocker. You start getting into kind of the double wing principle world where you're just pulling everybody as much as you can. Alright, so the way the offense was day one: right ISO, red wide ISO. That's the way I started. And wedge. I started with the A gap, B gap, quick side, and then there's dive. Okay, so a little talk about each of these plays. ISO, ideally, and this was stuff I learned from my time in the pro style offenses, you want to run that ideally at the B gap bubble, right? The big bubble in the 4-man front. Well, if you're going against an odd man front, if they've got like a tight front where it's like a nose and 2 4 eyes, that's kind of difficult. So you're going to have an adaptation piece into that. But for 4-man fronts, it's great. There's the A gap ISO to the strong side, but sometimes rules get a little weird and stuff like that. So for the most part, we stick to just running ISO to the quick side B gap. And our rules adapt based on where that guy's at. There's video links here that I can show later, or if somebody needs them later, that's fine. But basically, the general rule is, as long as that B gap's open, we're going to run in it. If that B gap closes, which you can see in this top left picture, if say there was an odd front or an under front or something, that B gap closes, then we're just going to X block it, okay? And then we'll bump it out 1 gap wider. So that's the way we'll typically try to run ISO. Wedge, that's an interior play. Wedge is one of those plays that if they got a small quick nose and they're trying to play games on your center, just run him over. Let the guards just get shoulders behind the center's hips and just run him over, and just let your fullback get 3-4 yards until they decide to sub him out. Now if they got big boys, it's going to depend. If your center can at least get a stalemate on that nose, and then you get the extra drive from the converging guards to kind of topple the dominoes there, then yeah, you can still get right up in there and get a few yards. So typically where wedge struggles, when what I've seen is they start getting B-gap penetration. So if you've got 4 eyes and the tackles don't squeeze down to the guards quick enough to cut off the B-gap penetration, that's typically where wedge struggles, because it should hit so fast, if you're doing it right, it should hit so fast that the C-gap players should not have time to get there before you're penetrating. It should be like raindrops trying to redirect, because they're firing off the ball. Like if they're any type of decent lineman worth their worth, they should be firing off the ball, and you should be puncturing right past them. So that's typically where I've seen wedge get troubles. Or if you've got a D-line that likes to root hog, wedge will struggle a lot. So it's kind of a situational thing, right? You have to know what they're doing on defense. If they're not going to root hog, and you've got tackles that can cut off the B-gaps, those 4 eyes, they can get to that inside leg and cut them off from penetrating, then you've probably got yourself a good play there. Same concept with dive, but we try to do it a little bit more from the spread world. Typically with wedge, we'll try to get tight so that we can all link together, kind of like that phalanx effect. With dive, more oftentimes than not, we'll run it against an odd front, and we'll try to basically space them out a little bit. So we might try to run rabbit with it if they're playing straight up 4s or 5 techniques. So if you've got like the weird kind of the old school Okie fronts where they're 0s and 5s, right? Dive's a great play because you end up getting the center man blocking the nose. He just takes him wherever he wants to go. The guards get up on the inside shoulders of the linebackers, and the back's just going to cut off the center's block. So say that nose wants to go, we're looking at dive over here, say that nose wants to basically slam to the strong side A gap, like they're trying to play some type of under front, okay? Or he's a 2-gapper. Well, what the center's going to do is do his best to work his hips to one side, and that back's job is just to read it. So if the center turns the nose to the right, and the center's butt's on the left, the back's going to pop in behind him and then just get vertical. And this works great versus 50 fronts because their tackles are trying to fire off hard, the ends are trying to fire off hard, and what you end up with is a 4-on-3 in the A-gaps with the 2 guards, the center, and your back. In oftentimes the nose isn't very agile, and by the time the back is getting up he's getting past the nose up into the linebackers, the guards have climbed and they've gotten into him at least long enough he can get by. A lot of times you get 6 to 10 yards, depending on how fast it hits and how good your guards are at sealing off those backers. All right, so that was the interior running game. That was the day one install. If you look, all we did was we taught A-gap and B-gap runs, and we didn't even teach B-gap strong side. We taught 2 A-gap runs and the quick side B-gap. Basic pass plays. We've got some wing tee, play action stuff in there. Adapted a lot of stuff with the RPOs and the air raid, and air raid with tags. So what I found is if you got strong interior run game, you really know your offensive line stuff, you get your vertical passing threats and the ability to be explosive, now you've got the tools in your offense to kind of address a numerous amount of situations you'll incur on a Friday night. So first thing we installed, red wide 3 shallow, right? You got the 3 running the shallow. He should be chasing the heels of the D-line. It's very shallow. You don't want to get him any deeper than 3 yards because then he starts getting into linebacker depth. You want him to be able to catch and run. Throwing window on the shallow should be ideally outside the tackle, right? He should be completing it somewhere outside the tackle so that the kid can catch, run, and get upfield and give him room to either go towards the sideline or if he needs to, cut back inside and get vertical. You've got the dig from the Y. It is an outside release. It's very pivotal. He does that. The 90s, that's just our pass protection. That's a 3-step. 90 is to the right. It's a 3 or a 5-step pass pro, depending on how you work it, but it's full slide. The back will take the opposite side of the lineman. So if it's 91, the lineman would slide left towards the odd numbers. 90, it's an even number, so they slide to the right. And the back just does opposite. Now, in shallow and verts, you can tag the back on a flare or a delay release, depending on if there's any pressure or not. But day one, you want to teach your offensive line basic protection so that they don't got to think too much because they're already trying to learn run schemes. You try to throw a bunch of pass pros in there, you're going to cause problems. So just 1, maybe 2 pass pros at most, and then like 2 run plays basically for them, and it's not too bad. So you got shallow, got verts. You can see verts from empty. Now, the big distinction here, I call verts and tubes. And I picked this up from the R5 system. He talks about there's 5 vertical cylinders if you look at a football field. You've got between the hashes, from the hashes to the numbers, so there's 3. So you've got the middle, then you've got the hash, the outside of the hashes to the numbers, there's 2 more. And then you've got from the numbers to the sideline, there's 2 more. So there's 5 vertical cylinders. And what I really wanted to do in this offense is, there's teams that will run cover 4 often. There's teams that will run cover 3 often. So you got to have something that can attack both and flood the vertical lanes. And I think fundamentally, if you don't have something that's going to go deep, they're just going to play heavy in the run and stuff you. So you've got to be able to back them off a little bit and take those shots from time to time just to make them honor it. Empty red verts, that keeps the tight end in. But if you hear tubes, that tells the 5 receivers they're just taking their individual cylinder. And if you look, I've got 5 eligible receivers, and we're covering 5 vertical cylinders, right? So it's a great play. Not a lot of people understand how to defend 5 verticals. You get those 3-4 teams that they want to run double overhangs and all that stuff. That's great. They want to run too high. That's great. Well, now we're going to put my halfback on your middle linebacker and see if he can handle it. And if that don't work, I can flip it and I go trio or tray out of the empty and get my X and I'll personnel it. So that's, you give yourself lots of tools to try to get your matchup that you want while exploiting the scheme. Then we got 91, right? We talked about 90 to the right. So red wide, we got the bubble, and off of it, we'll just do like a fade out combo to the other side. And then if you want to get in your heavier sets, you just go 50s. So anytime you got 2 backs, you might as well use them in pass pro, especially for quick passing game. It's kind of old school West Coast stuff. You're just pinch protection, guards pinching to the center, tackles pinching to the guards. The backs are J blocking off the guards' outside legs and fanning out. And what you should have is a nice little C cup for the quarterback to do his 3-step drop. I wouldn't recommend for pinch pro, I wouldn't recommend anything more than probably a 3-step. You might be able, if you got a good line, to get away with the 5-step on it. So if you hear anything quick, that's basically our 3-step play calls. So fast screens, quick screens, you guys that are in air raid, that's like an extension of your run game. For us, it's really a protection piece to keep the run game open, right? And if you've got talent or numbers or leverage or grass, then we're going to use them. So the thought process is, say you complete 80% of your bubble screens, and 80% of that time, so 80% of 80%, they get at least 4 yards, which is what you're going for minimum probably every play for an offensive coordinator. So you're really talking about what's 80% of 80%? Somewhere in the 70s, right? You're talking, so say 70% of the time you're getting 4 yards. Well, the other 30% of the time, you're throwing that down away, right? Because they either, the overhang beat the X's stock block and he tackled the guy in the backfield, or the corner came up and stuffed it after a 2-yard gain or something, right? Say they're playing some type of 2-read and they slam down on it, right? So bubbles are great, but I look at them more like a protection piece and accessory to the run game. I don't look at them like one of those things that you have to use as your run game. So, it's just my philosophies. I'm sure some of you guys got better. None of my ways are correct. These are just, as I'm talking the philosophy of why I do and why I think the things that I think as far as an offense goes. So we'll call bubble, that's the inside receiver going out. If there's trips, it's the innermost receiver. That kind of gives different looks there, trying to guess who's going to run the bubble. You can tag it later on. I'll show you some of those tags to switch it, but that's just a standard day one camp rule. Smoke is where you switch it. And so as a general rule of thumb, we like bubbles versus soft corners because the X can then kind of pin it in, and then we've got the 3 with a catch and a little momentum coming out the corner when he comes up late. We like smokes versus hard corners, so like cover 2 overhangs or like a man press or something like that. We prefer the smoke screen because it's a little bit easier to get that receiver open leverage-wise, right? We're just going to, so like defense likes to play 2-read. Well, why would we throw a bubble into 2-read? Instead, let's run the smoke, and we'll let the slot receiver fan out the guy. The X will turn in and just get just inside it, and then he'll work hash, numbers, sidelines, right? So just kind of a play on leverage. That way you kind of protect yourself even against teams that like to run palms or 2-read schemes. Slants are good versus, soft corners. You can get into the stuff where you start doing the bubble and the plus and the extend and stuff where you've got the bubble turning into a wheel, or you've got the stalk, faking the stalk and then going vertical. There's a lot of stuff that you can tag in later, but this was just base 1. We taught them bubble. We taught them quick 2, which was a slant from the 3-step. And we taught them shallow verts and tubes, right? Verts and tubes are basically the same play. So we've taught shallow, verts/tubes. We've got bubble, and then the quick slant. So there's 4 passes and 4 runs day 1. It's not too much. I think it's plenty, and depending on the cognitive ability of your players, you may have to even trim a little of this out. I was always on the side of press the envelope, make them think, make them engage, force them to try to have to learn it, and then if they can't, dial it back, versus not giving them enough, and then you don't have enough in come game 1. So, alright, so day 2, we built the inside first on day 1. Day 2, we get a few more formations. We start getting into more of the wing T world. And if you notice, I'm big on the right-left word association for our quick and our strong and our line. And then we've got, off of that, the tags for the skill positions to really make it versatile. Right is your basic old-school wing T formation. Left is the opposite, obviously. You got your 2-foot, 3-foot splits. Then we go into orange. We start getting into colors. That starts telling people what to do. So orange tells the X change side and the Y to widen out. This is almost like a flex bone type set, but you can run all your buck sweep, you can run your ISO, your trap, all that from it. And what it often does is it starts manipulating the coverage. Or sometimes they'll be forced to boss a linebacker out or something, and you open up interior running lanes that way. You got Regina and Lauren, and everything is the same as right and left except for the Y and Z flop. So, and we have a call to actually make them flop as well later separately, but this comes up pre-snap. So Regina and Lauren is like right, but you've got your Y and Z opposite side. Great for if you're trying to toss into the unbalance. And it's also good, a call like that is good if they know that you want to run to a certain side. Like say your strong tackle is a mauler, and they know you want to run over there and they're going to play their 3 technique there no matter what. Well, then what you've done is, by going Regina and Lauren, you force them into an underfront, and then you've opened up the ISO to the B gap, or if you try to run toss or something else to the quick side, you've opened yourself up some options back there, and it kind of it forces the DC to not be able to just play off of where's the good offensive lineman at, right? So, and then we've got a little bit of an enigma in there. I call that domino. So you got 5 wide receivers to one side. I have ran this in a game, and I have not met a defensive coordinator yet that knows how to line up to it, at least the first play or two. They might call a timeout and then talk about how they need to slide somebody over or something to help cover it. The biggest threat to this formation is an outside linebacker trying to fly down and try to pick it off, right? The goal with this is you can run pretty much any of your passing routes. The Y has to stay in because he's ineligible, right? But if the ball's caught behind the line of scrimmage, he can get downfield. So we love bubbles, we love trap, we love like quarterback draw, quarterback wide zone, any of that type of quarterback inside stuff, quarterback dive with a bubble to that side, that's great. You've got 5 on probably 2, maybe 3 tops. I like those numbers. You can get double teams often with the H in space. Domino right, domino left, it's great. So it's one of those things that you throw out there a couple times a game, and the DC is like, well, how the hell am I going to cover that and cover the box? So especially if you got a quarterback that can run. All right, this is just showing some of the tags reinforced. You got right and rabbit. You can see the spacing between the offensive line. Right X, that just tells the X he's tagged, he's moving over to the opposite side. You get that unbalanced look. Great for opening up a gap. So if you just ran plain old right, which you can see back here in this formation, you have no space out here, so the corner is going to choke down. So sometimes if you got a physical corner playing on that side, or maybe they personnel a strong safety or something there, or like a bigger linebacker type body to try to stop your buck sweep, well, then you go right X, and now you've forced them to widen that out, and you've opened up the lanes for your buck sweep, or if you want to run power, or the base play, or something like that, or wide zone to the strong side, you've opened that up a little more, right, to get up in there. So then we've got red, and anytime we heard trips earlier, that's for the receivers. You hear tripes with a Y, that's Y trips. So that's telling the trips that they're to the tight end side. Gives you some versatility. And as a defensive coordinator, it's a lot to think about covering and run fitting when you've got to worry about trips to the tight end side and trips away from the tight end side. It starts messing with their box, starts messing with things. So all ways of manipulating coverage and fronts and opening things up. And then you've got red under, okay, that takes your Z, moves him in at the wing, so that's a lot like right. But then you've got 2 receivers on top of it, that's more of the spread world. This is good versus like 4-3 teams, even 4-2-5 teams. They can struggle at times if you're running a good buck sweep team. They can struggle at times trying to get the numbers down into the run fit on that edge to the buck sweep, because if they're trying to stay too high, it's hard for them to get down in there. Now they run on a 4-3 and they spin down the strong safety and he's just overhung there. Well, maybe you got to kick him out and run up inside, but it's a big play on your gaps to the strong side. So. And the last one we've got is Patriot. So we had Tripes, which was 3 and Z. Then we had Under, which was Z with the 3 out here. And now Patriot brings them all together, and you've got this like cluster, or it's like basically a snugged up tray there to the side. And what you're really doing is you're just flooding gaps to your strong run game side. And not a lot of teams understand, oh, hey, when we've got this, we've either got to bump a lineman over or we've got to roll somebody down because we've got too many gaps to account for here, especially you start getting into buck sweep. If you get into some type of thing where you want to run like quarterbacks follow behind the buck sweep, where he flash fakes the buck sweep and then chases the running back, and you've got 3 pullers, now you're getting in kind of that double wing superpower world. It kind of causes problems for defenses to try to have to stop it. And the big thing is the backside pursuit, if they're going to chase it down or not. So we introduced the base play, which, like versus 50 France, basically it's man blocking for the tackle. He's going to take that, whether it's a 4-eye or a 5 or a 7 technique, whatever it is, he's going to take it wherever he wants to go. The Y is going to block out. And then the guard in the center, the strong guard in the center, responsible for the nose, and the first linebacker from the guard backside. So it's kind of a triangle, and then you've got a man blocking scheme. You pull the guard up in there, and all the back is doing is he's reading that pull and the strong tackle where the gap is. And if you get into wide zone, he should be used to doing this anyways, so it's not that big of a deal. But you start getting that lateral stretch by the defense, then he punctures, and you're in good shape. It's good versus odd fronts. You got buck, which you'll hear me say buck and buck sweep. Some people call them the same play. For me, it's a bit of a blocking variation. So buck is basically where you're kicking out the end, and buck sweep is where you're washing everything down and wrapping around, right? So getting into buck, and the thing with buck is you got to have two guards that can pull, and you got to have tackles that can do their jobs. So it's a lot of sealing and pulling, and if you can't do it very well, then you're gonna be in trouble. There's a lot to it. You can run buck from the gun or under center, and really the big difference is the quarterback just takes the place of the fullback. So instead of the quarterback bootlegging like you would under center, he stands back and then he runs like the zone read type fake to the backside to try to freeze and hold the defenders. And if you start getting in a situation with 5 techniques screaming down in there trying to chase the guard to the backside, so like over here in red wide buck, this 5 technique, he's chasing the line real bad, and say that linebacker's reading guard and he's going good, well, now you're in good shape for the pull read because you've got a safety that's 10 yards off, so you've got 5-6 yards probably easy. Trap. So I like introducing buck and trap at the same time because it's almost the same blocking scheme. The difference is who we're kicking out, right? Trap, we're kicking out the first thing B gap or wider. Buck, we're starting C gap or wider. Buck sweep, we're trying to hit it 1 gap wider. So it's all similar scheme. It's great. Trap is a great complement to buck. You hit them up inside quick. You hit them with buck, 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 and then all of a sudden you get them with trap. You start getting those linebackers kind of in this weird, predicament where they're flowing too fast or not fast enough. Trap's real good versus odd fronts as well. They like to play that nose and the 4 eyes. Trap is great versus 4 eyes. If the 4 eyes screaming and spilling real bad, like the thing that stops trap plays is the B gap spilling the guard's down block extremely hard. That's what stops trap. And the way that you protect that, if you know that they're going to spill, well, you've got rabbit to widen them out and give yourself a little more room to dig that out so that the trap, the guy that's running inside the trap has a more vertical lane, even if they try to spill. I mean, there's ways to do it. So, or you can bullet down and then basically just run buck around them. So if they're going to spill hard off the down block, that helps you in your buck game. So it's kind of a, it's a toss-up as far as how they're going to defend it. You start playing with the way that the defense is able to block rack. All right, so we introduce empty and tripes. This is a great play here. Stick to the strong side because it forces them to have to probably boss a linebacker out. Or if they're 3-4, at minimum, they got to drop that outside linebacker off. And then they'll have to have a strong safety in corner, and then you've probably got one-on-ones. To the backside, if they try to run that 3-4 again, and you got corner and backer, well, now you've got this Z receiver who's probably one of your more athletic kids on an outside linebacker, and he's basically running what they call a hip up. That's what the Dino concept is. I didn't invent it. Some guy at a small college, I forget the poor guy's name, I wish I could give him credit. He was up in Illinois. Watched a video on him once, and he talked about this kid is basically trying to beat the leverage of the outside linebacker, get inside, and then climb straight vertical. It usually opens up a seam, especially versus a 2-read team. And then the 5-yard fin. So if they're playing like a 2-read, and this kid's trying to back off and chase, and that linebacker's trying to wall and carry, oftentimes you're just reading the overhang. So that hip up, he goes up. If he tries to chase and carry, then the fin's there. If he tries to widen out, then the quick seam / whatever you want to hip up will be there. So you've got to read to either side. The stick is obviously stick. You're reading the overhang as well. Does he chase the out or does he sit on the stick route? 2 great ways you're playing with both overhangs at the same time. What happens is, and I showed this picture together for a reason, so stick translates to hole when you bring the tight end in. Okay, so if the tight end's in, then all that's going to happen is the slot and this guy, they're going to change jobs. You're reading the same thing. So either it's the same read as stick. Either the overhang or outside backer or whatever's here, he's either going to sit on the curl or he's going to chase the flat. One of them is going to be open. That's all it is. It's a simple curl flat read. Let's see, where are we at? Then the last play just shows the smoke, and talks about kind of that. Whoever's blocking in the quick screen, the fast screens, whoever's blocking that, they're taking down the most dangerous guy. So if they're both pressed, you're probably going to want to check out of the quick screen, right? But if it's like a cover 2 shell and this kid's down hard, or like they're playing press quarters or something like that, then this kid can still peel him out. He takes a step at him like he's trying to get him to get vertical, and then he comes back to the ball, and it should scrape him right off about the time the ball's getting there. Then all he's got to do is just work inside the block and out to the sidelines. So that's a lot. That's a lot of offense in a short amount of time. It's a lot of versatility in a short amount of time, right? You're talking buck sweep, trap, base. You're talking dive, wedge, ISO. And that's basically the foundations of the offense. And the schools I've been at, oftentimes the first year, that's what they're trying to install, right? And trying to get good at. And trying to get the kids used to the system and the tags and the names, because it's a lot of learning for kids, okay? And what you should do after that is the next couple days, their head's probably going to be spinning. The next couple days at camp, you should review that, right? And make them practice, make them, get good at what they're doing and feel comfortable what they're doing, so that you can call plays and start calling a decent system. You've got some balance already built into the offense. You just got to make sure the kids can execute now. So that's going to be a big thing. I recommend quizzing your players. I recommend using different colors. I recommend using rewards when you're quizzing them, or when you're doing your pre-practice meetings and stuff with your offense. I recommend all that stuff. Using the more layers and motivation and rewards you can do to get these kids to dig in, the better. Because at the end of the day, you can stand there and talk in front of a chalkboard for 2 hours and a kid not learn a dang thing. So you have to make them want to invest in learning it, and show them the importance of what happens when we do it right and how successful we'll be. So, alright, getting into the extension part of the package is kind of some of the... You want to make sure that those first couple days are down pat and comfortable before you start getting further in that. And it might even take you till year 2, depending on how it goes. But now we start getting into stuff, some protection pieces, alright? So you got brown and black, alright? Those are your 12 personnel looks. It's really still 11 personnel, but you're doing the same thing with flank that you did with the X, where you bring them into tight end. And what this does is 5-2, 3-4, 5-3 teams. This causes them problems, because now 50 fronts, they have to align a certain way, right? They're probably going to align nose, 2-4 eyes, and 2 what I call 7 techniques, but basically outside shades on the tight ends. Now, a 4-3 team, you may see 4-3 umbrella, you may see some over, some under, some stuff like that. A lot of times when they see this, they're probably going to go either stack or umbrella. And that's where you've got the 3 linebackers stacked in the gaps, and then you're just playing a 4-man front, and probably put the 3 technique opposite the running back most of the time. If they know you're a wing T guy, they may try to underfront you and stuff like that to try to take away your buck sweep. But if you're good at it, they're not going to stop it, because you'll find a formation or a way to do it. So you've got brown and black, which is a 12 personnel look. You've got shred and mangle. And you'll notice as we go through the formations and the offense stuff, I'll probably get into that video too when we start really digging into all the different formations in here and tags. But shred and mangle is Y off, and the Z goes on, but you're still in that 12 personnel look. Now you've enabled your Y, when he's peeled off like that Y off look. You've enabled him to start motioning around. So if you want to do the quick shuffle motion, oftentimes it doesn't change coverage. Oftentimes you can get a +1 pre-snap, all that good stuff. And also you can start getting into that zone read, the lead read stuff, and the split zone looks and all that stuff. So it's a great formation for that, and realistically all we've done is we've said one word, and you've altered your capabilities on offense. Still does the same thing to odd fronts, where they're probably going to line up like it's double tight. They'll probably treat it the same way. And you've got brown trips, black trips. Brown has an R, so the strong side of the run game is to the right. Black has an L, so it's to the left. And then we heard that trips word. Trips is always to the quick side, right? Shred trips, this is where it changes, right? We're only going to move the guys that are off. So shred trips, what that does is it gives you almost like that Regina and Lauren look. But it's really Y off, right? So Now they want to run their 3 technique to the quick side. You forced them into an under front, right? Gives you some options, and basically you've manipulated the front. You've got their probably nose or shade or 2-eye or whatever to the strong side, and that kind of opens up some things for you. So you want to run zone to that side, now you've opened up the inside zone, or you want to run wide zone, you want to run the toss to the outside, or you just want to get the quarterback and run the stretch play, the sweep play. Now he can catch it, get behind the H, and you've got, a 4-man surface basically to the left. So, and the awesome part about it is too, you go shred trips. Now you've opened up some RPOs. So you want to go, quarterback ISO, and say they've got the B gap full. So then you're gonna down, probably pull and kick. The H is gonna lead up in there, kind of on the J path. Quarterback's gonna get rolling, and now you've enabled yourself with the shred trips. The Y can go out on the little flat route, and you've basically got the belly flat pass from the wing T, the old school belly flat pass, but you've got it from an RPO from the shotgun. So imagine the overhang of the outside linebacker trying to figure out, oh hey, there's an ISO coming, I've got a guard and halfback hammering at me, and now the Y just ran past me. You really kind of put kids in conflict, tough to defend. Brown tripes, black tripes, is double tight, same deal. You're opening up gaps to the strong side by having that spread look there. Shred tripes, right? We said trips was this other look where it's the quick side. Tripes is to the strong side. So shred tripes, you got that Y off look, and you just flop the 3 over to get into that look. You can run all kinds of stuff. You can run, your typical 3-man route combinations. You can get into some stuff where, you've got a tight end to the quick side, and if you want to run to the quick side, now you've forced the defense to honor, well, hey, the back is going to the trips, so now they may roll their coverage over or do something to the trip side, and you can run away from that and kind of really get them into conflict. Empty right, empty left. I want you to think of the wing T world, right? So if we said right, you've got quick side to the left, strong side to the right, Y and Z. Now we've emptied it out, but because we're an empty, we're really 11 personnel, but it looks like, what would you say, 02 personnel, right? It's a different look. It causes defenses some problems. You've got a strong 4-man surface to the run game side that you want to go to, and a 3-man problem, trips combination stuff to the quick side. So you want to run quarterback buck sweep with the bubble, right? You got the halfback going out on the bubble, or say you want to run smoke. Now you've got your relatively athletic slot receiver and your halfback out there blocking on the perimeter, and you've got your X in space, and then you've got all your stuff inside. You can run quarterback trap, quarterback buck, you got the wide zone, you can run that Z, shuffle over, and you can run ISO. You can do all kinds of stuff out of empty right. I love it. Empty right under, kind of same deal. It's good for manipulating under fronts. It just happens that it's named under, but they want to run that 1, the 5, and the 9. Well, now you've got a wing right there outside most people call it a 9, I call it a 7, but that wing can block down. You run that buck sweep, so down, 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 pull, or you say that under front is playing a true 1 technique. What you can do is you just run there's a line call that we have that the strong guard will block the nose and the center will pull. It takes a little bit longer for the kick out to happen. The quarterback has to kind of widen a little more laterally before getting vertical, but it's the way that you can run buck sweep versus under front and still have no problems. So empty right under causes problems, and you've still got your RPO off the backside or whatever. You could run the Dino concept, the hip up with the fin, the bubble, you can run smoke, you can run any type of quick end combination, whatever you want to do back there. So that was empty right under. Now we're into empty red. Empty red is more the red wide look, and you've just widened out the H, right? This is the fun stuff where if you've got a true running quarterback and you've got some big boys as far as tight end goes, you start getting into river and lake. This is more of, realistically, it looks like 3 tight ends. It's like 03 personnel, but what you've got is basically a jumbo back or a blocking back. You've got your tight end, and then you've got your standard personnel out there. So you can still do some things from this. If you want to run the ISO, you bring your blocking back over there. He's kind of more of a fullback build. Or if you have like a big D tackle or something, like say your 3 technique on defense, or a big old belly. Get him out there, get him in the hole, and just let him, clear the way for the quarterback to get up in there. You can go river, B3, ISO, quarterback catches it, runs right up in the big gap, all that good stuff. Then you've got river. River and lake is obviously you sub out your halfback for a blocking back. You go river trips, same deal. You've got the blocking back to that right. You can still run your buck sweep, and you've got trips away from the buck sweep. That's always tough for a defense to handle. River Patriot, Lake Patriot. Now you've got 1, 2, 3, basically a 5-man service, and you can run a buck sweep to it. You can still run an RPO if you want. You're going to have to probably change it up to like smoke, or I've seen some other ones where they'll do like a little arrow and slant, stuff like that, like a or curl flat concept or something to the wayside for the RPO. It changes things because you don't have the 2 receivers, but you've still got, now you've got trips to the strong side. It's a 5-band surface basically, and you can run buck sweep to it. That's all good stuff. And we haven't taught anything new to the offensive line. They just need to hear R or L, river or lake, right? All of these other tags are the skill guys. They're the ones that really have to learn. And, they're the ones at the end of the day in the hallways. They get the pretty girls. They're the ones that probably driving mommy and daddy's nice new car to work, whatever. And so, hey, make them learn, right? Let the offensive linemen be treated like royalty. All right, so this is getting into our buck sweep, some of the buck variations, and kind of how we're able to run buck sweep pretty much anytime we want to. And the thing with buck sweep is if you're going to install it, you shouldn't dabble in it. It's an expensive play. And if you're going to install it, it's a lot of teaching for the offensive line. So, because they have to know when to pull, when not to pull, they have to know who they're going to versus different looks. It's a lot. So, you might as well master it and have it in, and then dabble in some of the other things. Because it forces such a strong reaction out of the defense, especially in the RPO game. You get pulling guards. They're looking at most linebackers are going to key guards, most of them. Every once in a while you get them that key tackle to guard or guard to fullback or whatever. But most of the time they're probably going to be keying guards. And when you start rocking them, force them to fly, and then you start hitting them with the counter stuff. You start hitting them with the read pulls, and you start, like, basically when the quarterback pulls it out. You start hitting them with the RPO backside. Now you've created a conflict, and it's just because you run one play, right? And buck sweep, it's about as American as it gets as far as football plays. So other than probably, I would say the next one would probably be power, would probably be the most synonymous with, classic football. Then you start getting into like your inside zone stuff. But so when you hear buck, we're kicking out the end. You hear buck sweep, we're washing him down. And it's good, you start playing games with the end's ability to read the block and the end's ability to handle the block. Now, if they've got a war daddy over there, which a lot of teams will, they'll put their big boy at 3 technique, and they'll put their best athlete over there at end to try to shut it down. This is where all of these different plays start messing with them and their ability to play ball. You've got buck sweep, where everything's washing down. You've got buck solid, where that's basically the call for the center and the quick guard to pull if you've got a strong side A-gap presence. So they're trying to run under front, or they're trying to slant and play games with you. You just have your center and your guard, they talk to each other before the snap. They're yelling solid or whatever call you want to make for it. You can call it some other call between a G and a C, call it a cage call or whatever you want to call it. Basically, the center knows he's going to snap it and then pull and kick out, right? That's that protection piece. And then you've got the buck log, which that's where if you just want to run plain old buck and you're not trying to wash down, but you know that end's going to squeeze hard, you tell the strong guard he's just going to wrap and log him. Then the quick guard gets around and you just push it one gap wider anyway. Buck log and buck sweeps essentially the same thing, with the exception of the objective is to get to the outside of the edge. The exception is who's doing it, right? Buck sweep, the wing's doing it. Log, the strong guard is basically hooking or log blocking the end. A lot of different protection pieces. I've heard people argue with me about, oh, you can't have the quick tackle cut the backside 3 technique, or you can't have the quick tackle cut the 4-eye, or he can't get there, that 4-eye is going to chase the guard, blah, 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 blah. That's true only if the quick tackle's not actually quick, and if the quick tackle takes a bad angle and is lazy. You can protect this so that they can't do it by either spacing it out more, start playing with the splits. I call that cattle and minotaur, right? So cattle is spacing to the left, minotaur is spacing to the right. You start playing with some of those things, and you can call, start getting into these games where, say I want to run buck sweep to the right, well, I run my standard splits, 2-2-3, right? Now, I want to make sure that this 3 technique isn't getting in there because he's causing problems. Now I can choke down the backside and call it bull. And basically what that enables the 3 technique is now he doesn't have that big gap between the center and the guard to run to. Because what I would call it is basically cattle. It's the bull type of splits where it's the bull splits to the left but the regular splits to the right. So what the guard is now is he's 6 inches next to the center. The quick tackle is 6 inches from the quick tackle 6 inches from the quick guard. So now he can cut the inside leg and get his body across that 3 technique, and he's not going to get into play. If they try to run the underfront or whatever, if they really cause us problems and there's no way that we can get it cut, then maybe, right? But that's very rare, especially at the high school level. I haven't met very many good 3 techniques. Very many teams that run underfront a ton. They might do it versus wing tee, but when they do, I haven't met very many of them that have their war daddies at the backside 3 technique, and he's fast enough to chase down the back, right? That back should be able to get through there. The only reason he wouldn't is if there's a traffic jam on the strong side. That's the only time that 3 technique should ever get there to catch him. Otherwise, that backside B gap should be sealed off between the quick tackle doing his job and basically like shoe shining. He's taking a real sharp angle inside to cut that off. And the quarterback should be holding the backside end. So I have yet to see it in high school football. I've been coaching for almost 12 years. I've yet to see it where a 3 technique in an underfront has been the sole shutdown reason for the reason we can't run buck sweep. I've seen it a few times where this backside linebacker is quick enough, he'll shoot through the gap and cause problems, but never the backside 3 technique, especially with that guard, because you're telling me he's going to fire out, stop the cut block, get off the cut block, and still get to the hole before my running back gets there. If that's the case, you're probably going to get beat no matter what you run, and you probably need to fire your running back. So, flank right sweep. Okay, so when you hear the plain old sweep word, that's really like an outside zone type play. And the reason we do it, we try to keep that sweep association in the kids' heads of knowing to get to the outside. So buck sweep, you're getting to the outside. Plain old sweep, that's an outside zone play. And this is your edge protection piece in the gap world. It looks more like a zone. It kind of causes problems. You think about a defensive coordinator, now you've got balance in your run game. So if you're looking at this play menu, you've got A gaps, you've got wedge and dive. You've got to the quick side, you've got ISO, and then you've got this sweep play. Now you've got an inside, a middle, and an outside to the quick side. To the strong side, we've got trap. Then we'll have what we'll show later will be like our A-gap power, that type of stuff. Then you've got buck sweep, and you can start getting into some other things as far as wide zone. You can run wide zone, sprinkle it in there. And what you've done is, now you've run one zone play, one true zone play, and you've run a bunch of gap plays. So they're reading guards, but then the guards are lying to them because there's zone instances in there, right? So their ability to flow, their ability to come downhill is inhibited. And where the wide zone thrives is when you get displacement on the end and the linebackers don't squeeze the vertical space out of the front. That's where these creases pop open, and if they're over aggressive, the offensive line just takes them out, the back sticks his foot in the ground, gets vertical, and that's why the 49ers and the Rams have done so well the past few years in the NFL. Some of these other wide zone teams, they like to run the slot T, and like they look like flex bone looks and stuff. And what's doing is just creating too many gaps for the front to handle. And then the front doesn't create the wall or the picket fence like you're trying to do. And the crease opens up that's maybe 6 inches wider than it should be because the guy's flowing too hard side to side. And all of a sudden there's a big crease there. And stuff that the defensive coordinator doesn't think's there, but they end up showing up on Fridays. So anyways, the sweep play, getting to the weak side or the quick side edge. You can do it under center or from the gun. From the gun, quarterback catches, gets to the outside. From under center, it's a dead toss to would be the fullback, and he gets to the outside. Both can be explosive at times, especially if the defense isn't ready for it or they're used to flowing for buck sweep. Sometimes you get them flowing a little bit lead-footed, and you get that little bit of contact. All of a sudden there's a crease there that shouldn't be as well. Also complement having this sweep play look because it looks like outside zone. And then you've got the wide zone. These guys are trying to flow to the outside to stop the sweep and the buck sweep. Then you got the wide zone, which is counting on them to flow to the outside so that you can push them out and then cut up inside and puncture them. So it's a great piece, for a great building block for working with the wide zone later. You've got buck short. This is kind of a complementary play to buck. It's basically there for messing with the end. If they're an end that likes to try to jam the tight end, or they're an end that likes to head up on the tight end, play that kind of head up world and stuff like that, or maybe they're trying to play a bear front or something. Well, if you just arc release the tight end and he blocks out on the overhang, or say the outside guy, now you've got a quick inside hit play. It almost looks kind of like, it almost looks like power, almost like belly, the way it plays out, but you're pulling both guards through it. They call it buck short. We got the read end we talked about earlier. That's kind of when you get that 5 technique really slamming down in, chasing the back. That's when that's good to hit. You can read the backer, and then the only difference is you're tagging the tackle to fan out, and the backer's screaming. It's good versus a couple of them fronts, especially the ones that have the 2 linebacker looks. Sometimes even you get in a 4-3 world, that wheel starts flying over the top hard. You can get in good shape where that read pull opens right up. Fundamentally, you're taking advantage of the defense's lack of fundamental play where they're keeping their shoulders square, right? If they start flowing and putting their shoulders perpendicular to the line of scrimmage, now you've got a lot of things open, right? We can start getting into that buck read where it's like a midline look, or the nose, let him through, the backside 2-eye, let him through, read him, pull it, and, what's oftentimes going to happen is buck read tackle, the Mike's going to see the guard pull, he's going to fly over the top. Well, if that center takes the angle, cuts him off, and your quick tackle fans out the end, and the nose chases the guard, now you've got a crease, right? Money to work with. So this is getting into some of our air raid stuff. This is a little bit more of the progression passing, the deeper passing, and some of the sprint out. So when you're running a passing game, you can't just sit in the pocket all the time and be a duck. You're going to get your quarterback killed. So what we've got is our 70 series. That's our rollout. So 70-71 is roll out to the right or sprint out to the right, and 71 is sprint out to the left, right? Basically, the offensive line strong side, they're bucket, hinge, and hooking. The back side is bucket, hinge, pivot, drop, and they're making the edge longer for the end to run around. So that's why the picture kind of looks funny here. They're basically drop step and then sealing the back side, making this kind of shifting wall for the offensive line. The front side's trying to hook. Now with this 70 cross delay, the reason I do it, you've got the tight end and the slot there as basically a fade flat setup, or a vertical in and out. And what you're trying to do is, you've got trips to the away side, or the quick side. They're going to run some type of trips coverage. They want to try to roll cover 3, great, we're going to gash them. They want to try to run some type of 2 high and cover 2, great, we're going to gash them. Because what's going to happen is, especially out of this empty right, what you'll have is a corner overhanged here and the free safety sitting over the Y somewhere, probably, or on the hash. The Y is going to occupy the free safety, the Z is going to chip, give the quarterback the edge, and then he's going to release. If the end tries to chase the quarterback and the corner is not playing aggressive, well, you can flip it to the Z. And what we're counting on is that corner to stick down on the Z when he releases, late. That corner is probably going to sit, he's probably going to maybe shift with the Y a little bit, and then he's going to widen out, and he's never even going to see this running back, or we can personnel it from different formations. We start getting into brown empty and stuff like that. You can personnel it, maybe it's the X or the H, or you can do it in different formations to get that USOM route, that cross route, that Y over, whatever you want to call it, the Y cross. It's the same concept, and he's going to come across and hit him right behind. So you're going to have a safety getting the top peeled off, the corner jumping the delayed arrow, and this crossing route's going to be right there. If that corner sits back, take the check down, let the Z get up and get 4 or 5 yards. If there's nothing there, and some reason they've rolled the coverage to the opposite side, well, the quarterback's got his naked bootleg, right? So there's a lot there. And these backside guys is basically just an emergency call. The X is just trying to occupy space, not waste too much energy. And the 3, he can even drift into the picture a little bit as the quarterback goes. He should almost never get the ball in this unless there's a complete breakdown. And then the 3 here, this is a backside post. So if they're one of those teams that wants to try to squeeze down, say there's a safety chasing the Y cross route, well, now you've got the post coming in behind it. And realistically, if this is taken off and he's coming in late on the post, this post should come open late. So it's kind of progression-wise, you're looking at, ideally, you're probably looking at the H to the Z to the 3. Right? This guy, unless something happens coverage breakdown-wise, shouldn't be open, and the X should never really be there. So, anyways, that's 70 cross. You can see it out of a few different formations. We got river trips. We got red trips strong. We're using the back as the chip and release guy. It's all the same play, multiple different formations. And if you look, we've got different guys involved. This is a home run ball. And if you get it and you hit the guy in stride, realistically, the goal for the quarterback is to throw it when the guy hits the hash. And the ball should be completed somewhere around the numbers. So that when he catches it, he turns up between the numbers and sideline. And there should be nobody there, right? The nearest guy should be running probably inside the hash, the safety. And he's probably going to be, by that point, quite a ways away. If you're athlete that catches the cross route, is any type of athlete, he'll be able to catch, put a move on him, and it should be a big play for you. We introduced the 70 cross with the boot because of that Y over, that Y cross look. This is old school wing tee boot. You're just running it blue wide. We run it to the right because most of the time you're going to have a right-handed quarterback. Why make you bootleg left? There's a lot more of that mechanics comes into play with the bootleg to the left with a right-handed quarterback. He's got to turn his hips and really get that. Some quarterbacks are good at doing it. Most that I've experienced are not, so we try to run the roll out to the right. Red wide waggle, right? Now this is the thing where boot and waggle, they're essentially the same play. The difference is the action in the backfield. So if you look at boot, you've got the strength to the left, and we're going away from where the buck sweep would go. The guards are pulling opposite. Waggle looks just like buck sweep, except instead of the quarterback trying to read the backside, he's going to feather with the backfield mesh and then pull out and then roll out to the right. It's going to be kind of a gentler rollout. It's not going to be as steep as like your 70 cross, but he's basically going to feather, drift, and then start floating, get into the pass route. And it's the same thing as boot. You're reading the same thing. You've got the delayed release. Hopefully this tight end has got a piece of the end. The guard gets the hook, and then you've got the quick guard coming in behind it. And what you should have is basically 3 guys sealing the edge for the quarterback. The H, once he fakes the thing, should basically settle down, turn around, and look for anything penetrating backside. And what you've done is you've moved the pocket. So if you're facing a 3-14 that likes to blitz, right, hopefully moving the pocket, moving him off his spot, changes the way that they're able to blitz you successfully. That's the whole goal, is to get the quarterback moving. He's not a standing duck. He's not a target sitting on an X waiting for him to get there. So, and it's kind of difficult for an offense or a defense to handle too, because you've got buck sweep coming. You get the linebackers flowing down, and then you've got a flat route coming outside from that, and they're really focused on the run. And then you've got an over the top. So you've got an over and under attacking the outside when they're trying to stuff the buck sweep to one side. It causes some problems for linebackers. That was day 4. That was kind of as a big buck and accessories to buck install there, like buck sweep, all that stuff. Now, day 5 is where you start getting into your auxiliary formations, your extra stuff, your specialty situations. Got some old school T formation. It's like right, but all you've done is you've brought the X in and dropped the Z back to the third running back spot. It almost looks like flank right, realistically, except the Z's in the backfield. If you're Buffalo, that's an animal word. We're doing something with personnel, right? We're either moving or subbing people in. Anytime you hear an animal word in this offense, that's a personnel change of some sort, or a personnel shift of some sort. Per is just for power eye right. Pill is power eye left. So now you've got, what we did is we've got rid of the Z, put the big guy in there, okay, for Buffalo. And now we've got power eye. So say you want to put an extra D tackle or something in there behind your strong side and just run, blast or power, or you want to run buck sweep from this, you can, running back can kind of jab and go from the buck sweep. And then you'll have both guards and both backs going, or you can run the buck sweep with the fullback going away, the blocking back leading, and it's a 3 lead blocker pulling play to the strong side, right? All good stuff. So it's tough on a goal line for a defense to handle that. So we got pro right. It's kind of your old school West Coast stuff. And we pro right eye. You just put the H back in the eye. Buffalo gun. the fullback's just going to step to the strong side. Okay, it's a little bit different look. Helps if you want to just run quarterback buck sweep. You can motion the H over and load that up, and it's kind of getting into some of that single wing type stuff, where you've just got a load of blockers going to one side, and the defense has to try to figure out how we're going to fit it, how we're going to match numbers. Pro right strong, you move the H to the strong side. That's the tag for the entire offense. So if you want to go red wide strong, the H goes to the strong side. You want to run right strong, the H goes to the strong side. All that stuff. It kind of changes your backfield action and your options, how you do it. But if you're trying to do something where you need them to the strong side, you can. There's pro right eye. Rip. This is a tag off of right. So right, you got to understand, right and roll and rip and all those things, they're all R words, right? Roll is the quads. Rip is where you start messing with the right. And right is where you'd have the Y and the Z here. Well, rip tells the Y and X they're changing sides. Now you've got what looks to be double tight. You've changed personnel, and you've got a bigger body there. So if you want to run rip ISO, now you've got a bigger body back there on the back side to run the ISO. Or if you want to run rip sweep, now you've got a bigger body out there to help lead block on the wide toss play. Rip eye, same deal. But if you want to run sweep, now you can toss it to the H back instead of the F back, your fullback. Just changes who you're getting the ball to. Same deal as far as buck sweep goes. You want to run buck sweep, he just jabs behind, acts like he's doing the buck path. This kid maybe jabs and then goes strong on the buck path. All that good stuff. You can run all these plays from the same formation. That was the goal. Now start getting into motions and trades. This is where, if you're wanting to create a pre-snap advantage, it really causes problems with the D coordinator trying to figure out how to line up to all this, but then on top of it, you can shift into it. So then they've got to not only figure out how to line up to all of it and how they want to get defended and the run menu that you've laid out for all the formations, but now they've got to figure out what happens when he trades pre-snap. It creates a very, very large chunk of options for them to have to, cognitively attack. So, tip, I got this guy from a guy in, I think it was over by Nashville. I don't remember if it was Oakland High School. I can't quite remember. Somewhere over by Nashville, a guy had a great motion package. I just augmented it into this offense. So you've got tip where the Y moves over. He starts out, so you go red wide and then tip. The Y will shift after everybody gets set. Red wide zip. The Z moves over to the other side after everybody's set. You've got tip 2 red wide. He starts out in the wrong spot and then moves over to the correct spot. Zip 2 red wide. He starts over in the wrong spot and then goes over to the right spot. So you can get 2 motions with 1 word. Really 2 words. So you're going tip and tip 2, zip and zip 2. Zipper, this is that thing that looks like, this is where you take the Y and the Z and move them both. Okay, this is what looks like Regina and Lauren, or it looks like some people call it a flop, but imagine lining up in red under X, which is red with the under to the 3, and then you had the X tagged over. So they've got an unbalance where they're really shifting the secondary, and then you flop the Y and Z and then run quarterback sweep back to the backside, right? You've really messed with their coverage, how they can cover it. You've really messed with their front, the way they can line up to it. Alright, so then we've got razor and laser. That's just our orbit motions. Come back at a 45. You can get into all kinds of stuff doing that. You can run toss. So you want to run orange laser sweep. Now you've got the toss going to the Z instead of the F. Right up razor, and then you go buck sweep. Sometimes I've seen some old school wing T coaches where they go right, say up, moves the H to the up slot position, right? And then they go buck sweep, and it's just a slower buck sweep. And sometimes that fake from the fullback going on the quick side path really gets defenders going this way if they're not reading their keys properly. And that's where the misdirection of the wing T starts really paying off and playing into it. And I tell you what, at the high school level, kids are suckers for motion. They start seeing razor, laser, and then you still hit them with the buck sweep going back the other way. Or you go like laser and then have them return and run the buck sweep, or buck play, whatever you want to call it. Like, you can call 100 different options. You run that motion and then run it back to the motion side. It really causes problems for high school kids because they're keying, their eyes naturally gravitate towards the thing that's moving. And that's it. So that's a ton of information for the first video. That was basically just the 5-day install for the offense. Didn't even get into wide zone, didn't even get into superpower yet. There's a lot more to it. The goal is that you have cognitively smart players that know football and are able to line up in a variety of things. And really, you're looking at a huge menu. You're only going to practice a percentage of that in practice. And it's going to be based on need or based on what you think you're good at personnel-wise. So it's kind of like you laid out the McDonald's menu, but now you only like the Big Macs or the quarter pounders, or you're up at the steakhouse and you only like the baked potatoes, but maybe you don't like the sweet potatoes, something like that. That's basically what we're doing offensively. You're giving yourself options and the ability to be multiple, and the ability to comb it back to be precise with what you need. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in to the first edition of Coach Nichols' podcast on offense. Next episode, we'll probably get into offensive formations and kind of explain some of the methods and thoughts behind each one. Other than that, stay tuned, like, subscribe, and appreciate you guys. God bless.